22 episodes all led to this. So did Oliver rise above everything he's been through, or did he fail his city? Find out in my recap and reaction of episode 23 of Arrow, My Name Is Oliver Queen. The episode opens with Raish and Oliver flying over Starling City in a plane, ready to drop the Omega virus on Starling City. Meanwhile, in Nandar Parbat, Team Arrow is still in the League dungeon, but they're not dead. Instead, they're waking up. Ray wonders why they're not all dead from the Omega virus. Malcolm explains that he secretly vaccinated all of them with an antidote before they pass out, which was all part of the plan. Malcolm says him turning on Oliver was just another part of the plan, to make sure Raish had no doubts about Oliver's loyalty. Team Arrow seems skeptical about this, but wonders how they're going to get out of the dungeon. Luckily for them, Oliver and Malcolm planned ahead, making a call to the Flash for help. He breaks the team out and they gather their gear to leave. Barry reassures everyone that they can still trust Oliver despite his recent behavior. Back on the plane, it begins to malfunction and lose altitude. Raish thinks that Nessa tampered with the plane, but Oliver stands up and takes blame, declaring his name is Oliver Queen, and he will stop Raish. Oliver attacks Raish and his League members with Nessa's help, trying to get the virus. The League members go down easy, but Raish takes him down just as easy. He then grabs the virus and promises Oliver and Nessa that if they survive the plane crash, he'll hunt them down and kill them. Team Arrow regroups in Ray's lab. Malcolm gives a battle strategy against the League of Assassins, but before they put it in motion, Oliver and Nessa drop in, literally, seemingly unharmed from landing the plane. Before Oliver can explain anything, Diggle punches him in the face. Oliver explains that the only way he could defeat the League was from the inside. That's why he was working with Malcolm this whole time. Oliver then confesses that he wasn't expecting to see Felicity or Diggle again, and he had planned to die in the plane crash after killing Raish, so he wasn't thinking about the consequences of his actions, but they agreed to put their personal matters aside to stop the bigger issue at hand. Team Arrow finds out that Raish will unleash the virus at a hotel that Damien Dark will be at. Apparently Raish not only wanted to cleanse Starling, but also kill his old enemy. Arrow finds and confronts Dark, but it turns out just to be a servant, who says Dark left Starling hours ago. The servant receives a call. It's Raish who tells Oliver that he will release the virus from 4 points across the city. Laurel informs Captain Lance of the Omega virus being released. At first he refuses to help, but after Laurel finds that he's been drinking, she basically says to man up and look at the bigger picture, which he eventually does. At Ray's lab, Team Arrow puts the finishing touches on their plan to destroy the Omega virus. Oliver and Felicity find a minute alone. He tells her of his reoccurring dream he's been having, about the two of them. He dreams that the two of them run away together. Oliver says he can't defeat Raish. Felicity says that Oliver and the Arrow can't, but something else can. Captain Lance informs the units of the Omega virus attack, and they assemble to help, as does Team Arrow. At his lookout point, Oliver is confronted by an unarmed League member who says Raish is waiting at the city dam for a final showdown. Diggle finds the League member carrying the virus and is almost killed by him until Thea makes a save wearing Arsenal's uniform. Turns out the member is carrying the virus in their bloodstream and cuts himself, infecting everybody around. Oliver meets Raish at the dam, and after a brief exchange of words, they start their epic Mortal Kombat. At Ray's lab, Ray and Felicity have created the airborne antidote for the virus. When Captain Lance calls Felicity and tells her that the Starling police are waiting for an opening to shoot Oliver and Raish on the bridge. Felicity wants Ray to put on his Atom suit and save Oliver, but Ray says he can't, as he has to finish the airborne antidote. On the bridge, the battle continues, with Raish gaining the upper hand, but before Raish can land a killing stroke, Oliver counters, stabbing Raish. He says that he chose his heir well and gives Oliver his ring and dies. But then Oliver is shot by the police. He falls off the dam but is caught by Felicity in the Atom suit. Everyone meets back at Ray's lab. With the city safe, Oliver thanks his team, and Malcolm, for helping him save the city. He says that Starling City now has plenty of heroes protecting it. He then announces that he's going to retire from being the Arrow, as he wants to discover more about himself with Felicity as Oliver Queen. Diggle gets upset by this and leaves the room. Oliver follows him and tells Diggle that he's still counting on him. Diggle says that he's unsure if he can get over what's happened between the two of them. The two shake hands before parting ways. A little while later, Malcolm visits Thea. He tells her that he's planning to leave Starling City as well. Thea says that she'll never fully trust him, but thanks him for honoring his word to make her a stronger person. Oliver says goodbye to Thea and says her new hero name should be Speedy. He then talks to Malcolm and says that their deal is complete and hands him something. Malcolm then asks if they're enemies again. Oliver says he'll never forgive him for what he did to Sarah or Thea, but it all really depends on what Malcolm did with his part of the bargain. Speaking of, later in Nanda Parbat, Malcolm is the new leader of the League of Assassins. Nessa says that it's convenient that it all worked out for him. He says the last several months were all part of his master plan. He orders Nessa and the League to kneel. She says she will take her place as the rightful heir to the demon. Malcolm says she will try, but until then to kneel, and she does. At an undisclosed location, we see Oliver and Felicity driving down the coast. Oliver says it's time for him to be something else. Oliver admits that for once in a long time, he's happy. So there you go, guys. Season 3 of Arrow. Pretty crazy, right? I say it wrapped up pretty nicely, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, it was a pretty chaotic season, so it's nice to end on a high note. I'm pretty satisfied with Malcolm being the new Raish, but I'm not sure what else he has to do to gain Team Arrow's trust, or at least their understanding. I mean, he basically will stay on his side of the room, just as long as you don't poke him too much. So don't poke him too much, or else he'll be a problem. I was hoping that Thea was going to be Cheshire or Artemis, something that gave her her own identity instead of just, replacing a sidekick, but hey, it is what it is. Also, speaking of identities, looks like Diggle might finally get a costume next season. And speaking of Young Justice, which I kind of just made a reference to, there's a character on there called the Guardian, which might make a good fit for Diggle. He didn't have any powers, but he was still a part of the team. But I don't know that much about the character, other than what I know from Young Justice. So altogether, it was a great season finale, good way to end everything, and tease some storylines for next season. Really excited to see where it's going to go. I think this season was pretty good, little weak some points, but I think altogether pretty strong. I'd give it 8 green arrows out of 10. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, or check out some of the other videos we have on the channel. We'd really appreciate it.